So we're here with Sam Higgins, and I've known her for 12 years now. And she has a really cool story, I feel, because you have POTS.
Yeah.
And since COVID, POTS is one of the things that is coming from having COVID, especially in women.
Trauma.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So she's kind of been on the journey for a while now. But the thing I love about her journey and story so much, she has 4 boys, and she was diagnosed with POTS at the age of 30. So she, and your boys were real young then. Because
they were little. They were all under 8.
What was it that catapulted you into even knowing you had POTS?
In 2015, I was having some health issues, and we didn't know what was going on. We didn't know like where they were coming from. And so I went, and they thought I might have uterine cancer. And so they did a biopsy. And during the biopsy, my heart rate went sky high, and I kind of had a mild seizure. And that was it. He called a heart doctor friend of his, and he said, I'm sending her over there. And so my husband, Ben, we drove that way. And on the way there, I kept passing out. I was having like crazy things happen. And then from there, it took a whole year to diagnose me. So they kept treating the symptoms. A lot of times doctors treat the symptom of what's happening in that moment. They don't try to find what the root cause is.
Sure.
And for a whole year, we treated the symptoms of like the high heart rate, the extremely low blood pressure, the seizures, the passing out, like all that kind of stuff. I was a runner, so I used to run 4 or 5 miles a day. That's when I really knew something was really wrong, is when like I had like no energy. I couldn't even walk up the stairs without passing out.
For anybody who goes from one health extreme to being healthy to an extreme unhealthy state, people will think she's being dramatic.
Yes.
That's not,
like
it's
she's
not
a
real.
hypochondriac.
Yeah.
That's what I got
and
told
that's
a
what
lot.
happened.
Yeah. Like you're just a hypochondriac. Like there's nothing wrong with you. Also, we were in full-time ministry doing youth. And so I was 6 hours from my mom, and we were 13 hours from his parents. So we didn't have any family that lived near us. So we were doing it all on our own. The boys, thankfully they were in like preschool and school. So Leighton my baby was the only one that was at home with me all day. But the others were kind of in school half days or whole days. And so that really helped. But, when you're in full-time ministry like that, like 100% has to be given at all times, it feels like. And so, or that's how you feel anyways. And so, it was just a lot, but, after that first year of like getting misdiagnosed, we finally, found out what I have, which is, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, which is POTS. And it's just, so it's not an actual autoimmune. It's a syndrome, but it has the same symptoms as autoimmune. A lot of people with lupus have the same symptoms as like I have, and those kinds of things. And so from that point on, we were able to kind of figure out maybe this is how we can start treating it. But POTS was also new to the medical field. So like a lot of like hospitals did not even know what it was at that time.
Because
so
this
like,
was 7 years ago.
Yeah. So like when I would go into the emergency room, they would say, oh, well, you're just hyperventilating, or, I was having horrible migraines, and the seizures that I had leading up to that really affected my speech. So for like a whole year, because the tilt table test they did, I had a really, really bad seizure and was out for a little while. And
the tilt table test is one of the really,
that's how they diagnose it. Yeah. It's the main diagnosis of it. And so, I wasn't able to like pronounce words anymore. Like I knew what I was wanting to say, but it wasn't coming out of my mouth. So it was like somebody that's had a stroke. And so I had to like relearn to do all of that at the same time. And, during that I was having emotional breakdowns and nervous, I call them panic attacks, just completely breaking down all the time.
You went to the hospital after COVID or something.
Yeah, I went and when I found out I had COVID.
Yeah, and they said, and you had said POTS, and they go, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
because
the doctor, he was like, it's interesting that you have POTS before COVID, because a lot of people that have COVID are getting POTS after. And it's because it is triggered by trauma to the body. And what really set the POTS off for me was in a 10-year period. I had 4 kids in a row. We had went through some stuff with the church we were at, which was very stressful. And then moved to Ohio, moved away from all our family. And then our pastor's wife died in a car accident. And I had talked to her that morning. And then by that afternoon, she was gone. And so evidently my body was suppressing it. And I always say, basically my nervous system just crashed and didn't know what to do with all the stress. And so ultimately that's what kind of triggered it.
The pastor's wife who passed, you are somebody who does hair. So you did that for her.
Yes.
And that was another trauma trigger. It was.
Yeah. And I didn't even know that could cause, because at the time I didn't feel like it was stressful. Like, in the moment, like I wasn't
and real quick,
emotional about
what
it
we're
at all.
talking about is at the morgue. She's the one that did her hair.
Yeah.
She's the one, because you go into that, doing it as, it's, I'm going to do that, not realizing.
And I felt so honored that they even asked me to do that, because I loved her so much. And, I had been doing her hair up to that point. So I felt honored to do that. So it didn't really stress me in that moment. I didn't even think about that at that point. I was just kind of going through the motions, because I think you just, when something like that happens and something tragic happens and like you're just trying to get to the next day, that was just another thing that kind of triggered. But there were so many things, because I don't like to put the blame on just one thing. I mean, and that's why they said we want your 10 years of history. What's happened in the last 10 years? And that just was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, I guess you could say,
and so
for
for people
body.
getting this after COVID, it's
the trauma to the body, because COVID was traumatic. I thought I was dying. In fact, I told Ben, I was like, well, I think I'm going tonight. And he was like, you're not, you're fine, but you feel like you're going to die. Like your heart rate is so high.
Yours was getting up like over 200.
Yeah, because I already have tachycardia, and so then it was even worse. Yeah, and I was like, this is what I want you to play at my funeral. I was planning out the whole thing, and he was like, babe, you're gonna be fine, and I ultimately was, but I had been in remission with my POTS up to that point, because it can go into remission. It can lay dormant again for a while if you get on, you do the things that you're supposed to do and eat right and do all that kind of stuff. And so you can get it into remission. So I had gotten it pretty much into remission, and then I got COVID.
I want to talk about chronic illness. What does that look like for a mom and her kids? How do you navigate those waters?
So our 4 boys are really active. Right now they're 15, 14, 13, and 11. They like to be outside. I'm ADHD, so I was always really active in sports and just doing outside activities all the time, biking, that kind of stuff, running, hiking, that kind of stuff, swimming. And so I always took our kids places and did things. And so when I got sick, it just kind of went to nothing. And so I think for me, I am one that I don't want to say, well, I can't do that because I'm sick. So I just do it, and then I pay for it later, for like a week or two after. But it was keeping me in this cycle of staying sick all the time, because I was pushing myself too hard. It wasn't until I saw a life coach at Mayo Clinic, actually. And he said, Samantha, you just got to be okay with starting over. Stop looking about what your life was like before you were sick, and focus on what it is now. It's okay to rest for a couple days and then do something for a couple days.
Well, because, and for anybody who doesn't really fully understand POTS, it will take your body out.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you walking, taking a nap is, I remember you talking to me about that. Taking a nap is actually a terrible thing.
It's actually horrible for POTS.
Yeah. And you, passing out randomly.
Anything that's elevation, like roller coasters, I'm not allowed on roller coasters for that very reason. But so if I stand up really quick, all the blood rushes to my legs. Yeah. So that's why you pass out. Most people, when they stand up, it takes a while for their blood to kind of trickle down, that kind of thing. For people that have POTS, standing up too fast or moving too fast, or even spinning around too fast or anything like that.
Being in your 30s, what is the mentality that you would go through and no longer being able to clean the house.
Yeah.
Cook dinner.
So my grandmother moved in with me, and she did all the housework.
Well, what's that like for you in a mental
it's
state
debilitating.
to no longer to like mentally debilitating?
Yeah, like I lost my mind. In fact, I fell into a really bad, in fact, 2018 was probably the worst, but the best year because I feel like when you're at your worst, you can either run to Jesus or you run away. And, Ben and I have talked about it, and he's like, what do you think got you there? I said, I just clung to Jesus, just to scripture and just to my prayer and journaling. But I go back and I read those journal entries from that year because that was a really hard year.
It's awesome that you were able to do that, but there's a flip side to it because it was a really dark year.
Yeah,
like it was a really
year.
hard year, depressing year. I mean, there was a lot you had to battle psychologically.
Oh, I almost lost my marriage. I almost lost everything because, the enemy had convinced me that I was a burden. And there was one point where I was driving to the doctor's office, and Ben and I talked about this the other day, in fact. But there was a moment where I thought, okay, I'm just going to end it all because I felt like such a burden to my family and to Ben. And I mean, there was like a second there and my phone rang. It was my dad, and I was crying, and he was like, Manthe, what's wrong? And I was just telling him about what was going on, and that Ben and I were not in a good place. And then the kids were just driving me crazy. And I was just so tired. I was just sick and tired of being sick and tired, basically. And my dad said, tomorrow's a new day, and you can just let this be a bad day. But know that tomorrow's a new day, and you can wake up and you can start new, and just every day just think that, okay, tomorrow's a new day. Tomorrow's a new day. And so that's kind of where I think having parents that are faith-filled and having in-laws that are faith-filled, having a husband that loves the Lord, and even my kids, my boys are so further along in their spiritual walk than I ever was at their age.
But there's people who don't have that.
There's people that don't, and I don't know how they do it without Jesus, But if you don't, I would say just know that there's hope in knowing that you can get yourself out of it. Like, don't get stuck.
Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that you almost ended it. I really want people to not feel the shame when your mind goes there, when you're in a really deep, dark place. Even people that have great faith, their mind can go there. It's an easy place to go to. Especially, I went there last year. Yeah. When you just don't even see that there's a future for your health to be better,
or that there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
Your mind can go to a really weird place.
Journaling has been the best thing for me because I can just journal out all my thoughts, and then I might go back and read. I'm like, what was I thinking? Kind of thing. Like, well, how did I get that low? But let God be with you in the valley. Don't feel like you have to be on that mountaintop every single day of your life, because that's just not real. That's not reality.
It's not.
I'm all about positive thinking. I feel like if you pour positivity into your life, there's going to be positive things that happen, but that doesn't mean that there aren't negative things that can happen. My kids know that, okay, mom has this syndrome, but we see her power through it every day. But then there's days where they're like, okay, mom's really tired. We can tell. And then those are the days that I rest. Because I think it is good to take rest, because even Jesus had rest days. I don't know if you heard me this morning, but when I was getting ready, I always listen to, I have a playlist. It's called our Sunday Morning Victory playlist, but I play it every morning when I'm getting ready, because it's just starting you out on a positive note every day. And there's so much negativity in our world today. And because mental health is such a big thing right now, which I'm so thankful that there's so much awareness being brought to it, because I think for years, no one wanted to talk about it. Like our parents and our grandparents, you didn't talk about that kind of thing.
Especially if you're in ministry.
Especially if you're in ministry,
and Sam and Ben, they were in ministry for many years. Yeah. And so the fact that Sam is having this conversation with me and sharing that she was at a place where she was like, I just don't, I'm just done. I don't want to end it. Yeah. I am actually very proud of her for sharing that, being somebody in ministry, because it's almost a very, you think it's taboo to talk about it in society, to be in ministry and say, that's the things that I deal with, super taboo, because people are like, well, your faith should get you through. Well, we're also human.
And families suffer, marriages suffer, divorce happens because you don't talk about it, kind of thing. And I will say you can live with it. It's not, and you can still do the fun things. Like I still jump off crazy cliffs with my kids when I shouldn't. Yeah. And I still climb and bike ride and do things that I shouldn't do. I went parasailing. My sister-in-law, she's like, everything it says that like you shouldn't go on, that you shouldn't parasail if you have these things. And it was like back problems, heart issues, like blood pressure issues, like all this. She's like, Samantha, that's your whole list. Yeah. And I was like, I know. And guess what? I did it and I lived. Yeah. So last year I made a commitment because one of my friends, Hannah, who is 22, I'm 37. So there's a big age difference, but she was getting married and I made a commitment that before I turn 40, I'm going to do things that I would never do because I'll have to have a fusion surgery. And so I won't be able to do those things. I went whitewater rafting. I did zip lining. I've done parasailing, and I'm scared of heights, by the way. I'm so thankful for it because it's just such an important thing to spend quality time with your kids. But I will say this about like finding things to do when I'm really tired, but I'm like, I need to be spending time with my kids, whatever. I'm a movie person. So we go to the movies a lot.
Oh, so that it gives you your rest, but you're still spending time with them.
Yeah, I'm still with them. We're doing something fun. And so we'll like go to the mall and eat Chick-fil-A and then like go see a movie. Yeah. That's kind of become our thing.
With the uptick in POTS diagnosis, especially since COVID, because if you can research this, it is it's a really big one that is coming out of COVID. And so some days the person who has POTS will look fine. Yeah. Normal. Yeah. And that's another reason why so many people think that they don't take people with POTS seriously. Yeah. Because one day you're fine. Like you're just doing this with me today. Yeah. But then tomorrow you could just be on the couch out.
Oh, my body could completely crash. Yeah. When I came back from the beach, we got back on a Saturday and on Monday, my body just crashed and I could not even hardly get up and walk.
And I would suggest for somebody who, if there's somebody in your close circle, somebody that works for you. Yeah. And they're 1 week good. And then the next week, boss, my body is crashing. If they have POTS, that it really is something serious. Right. It's not drama. It's not overreacting. That really is just how POTS works. Right. POTS takes you out when it feels like taking you out. Yeah. And it lets you live when it feels like letting you live.
I know of people from my hometown that a little girl, she's 12 and she has POTS. And hers doesn't really affect her blood pressure much as it affects like her her stomach. Like she has stomach issues more than anything. And then I know like my brother has a friend that his wife was diagnosed with POTS and she has to have blood transfusions. Like it has affected her blood because it all has to do with the autonomic nervous system, so which controls everything in your body. So like for me, it affects my heart. And one of my triggers is heat. I immediately can have like a panic attack. And then I have migraines, horrible migraines. But they don't happen all the time. They just happen every once in a while. But when I have those days of those migraines, like I'm down.
I do want to say for anybody who is a boss and you have an employee who is now diagnosed with POTS because of COVID, I would hope that after hearing all of this, I know everybody has to do their job and everything, but I would hope that you give them a little more grace and understanding. Right. You're really on the symptoms agenda. You're really never on your own agenda for your health. And so just a little bit of awareness there in the workplace. Yeah. But I'm not going to hit on that. I'm actually going to hit on awareness for your spouse because especially if you're diagnosed with POTS and now you have a spouse who was able to do everything, cleaning, cooking, or errand. I don't know what your spouse does. I don't live in your home, whoever's watching, but whatever your spouse did can no longer do. And that's what Sam and Ben had to navigate. Ben was used to Sam being a certain way, and Ben is so good with you. I watched him be so good with you, but you guys had to learn to navigate that.
He didn't think I was faking, but like, because the doctors were like, nothing's wrong with you. Your heart, you just have a little bit of tachycardia kind of thing. He just didn't. He was kind of like, oh, I think you're just depressed because we had just moved and like it was a whole thing. And I'm like, no, I'm telling you something's wrong with me. And so it took a couple years for him to really understand. But even now, he's still like, there's times where he's like, so are you going to lay around today? Like, what are you going to do? And I'm like, well, I feel pretty good today, so I'll probably get up. And I think also making that first step of just getting up, that is like, but it is work to just get out of the bed. But I also have
because of what it does
so,
to you, right? It's like work just to get out of bed because, and like some people,
well,
with
your
POTS,
muscles, your nerves, like, because I have nerve damage on my left side. So one of my tells is my left eye when I'm really tired or I'm having a bad day, it sags really bad. And so like my boys know that now. So like they're like, Leighton the other day, he was like, Mom, your eye is like doing, it's weird.
What would you say to somebody who is the spouse of somebody who has been newly diagnosed with POTS? What would be your advice to give them to understand the situation and to be there for them? How can they be there for them while they're still trying to understand this new, very complex syndrome?
I would say patience is key, and go to every single doctor's appointment and listen and really soak in what they're saying, because, and I will tell anybody this, that the diagnosis is POTS. First thing you should do is go to Mayo Clinic. They have, and I didn't go till 2 years ago. So, I was 5 years in before I ever went. And I wished I would have went when I was first diagnosed, because I was telling Megan yesterday, all these doctors were treating the different symptoms because POTS is so new. They don't really know, at that time, they didn't really know what to give you. And they were just treating the high heart rate and the low blood pressure and things like that. And then you have side effects from that medicine. And then you have to treat that symptom of that side effect. And so it becomes this constant horrible roller coaster of meds. I was up to 14 pills a day 4 years ago. And I finally found a heart doctor, a cardiologist, and that's an important thing too, is finding a really good cardiologist. But I found mine in St. Louis, and he's amazing. And he took me off everything except my blood pressure pill. And he said, now for a month, you're going to go through withdrawals. You're going to have it's going to seem like this is not going to work. But he said, I'm telling you, it's going to work. And so Mediterranean diet was the big thing, cutting out breads. And because for me, dairy, like eating ice cream, I felt like I was suffocating for like 6 hours after I eat ice cream, like somebody sitting on my chest. So I would say get on the right diet plan, which Mayo Clinic is the best at coming up with what fits you best, because they make you go through all these tests and stuff like that. And I know it can be expensive, but you're going to spend less if you go straight there first than what you would spend leading up to eventually you're going to be there anyways. So I would say Mayo Clinic, definitely. I went to the one, I know Jacksonville, Florida has one, but I went to the one in Rochester, Minnesota, and it was phenomenal, and they are amazing. And I was there for a week, and then they want me to come back and do another week study with them for POTS and for the fibromyalgia clinic.
What would you say to somebody when they do get frustrated? I know patience is key, but what is something that they can tangibly do in that moment for their spouse, so to eliminate their spouse from feeling, because sometimes whenever our spouse gets frustrated, you feel
alone in it. And I joined a support group through Facebook of people that have POTS. But Ben, for sure, he's learned we pray together when I'm having those moments. And he also, so just being present, you don't have to say anything, but just being present in the moment. And we've learned to do that a lot, just being in ministry with people that have lost loved ones or are going through things. And there's nothing to say in that moment, but just being there. Like we've had people tell us, just because you were there, it meant something.
Yeah.
And so I think just being present in the moment with your spouse that has it, or friend.
So
or
even if
member,
you're, even just for your spouse to quietly sit with you,
just quietly sit with
like your spouse doesn't, because I think a lot of times our spouses, especially because POTS is more common in women, just so you know. So it's really
women in their 30s, really, yeah.
And so for a man, their go-to is to want to fix things, especially for the person that you love the most and is the most important to you. You're definitely going to want to fix it. And then they get to a point where they can't fix you.
No.
And then that's really angering for them, not at you angering, but just angering for them that it's like, this is the person I love the most and I can't take this away from her.
Yeah. And they don't feel good and I don't know what to do. But we learned early on in our marriage that like communication and just being present with each other is key. For him just to sit next to me and hold my hand or just sit next to me in that moment means more to me than him trying to come up with be the problem solver.
I love that. And so just sitting next to you, holding your hand, even quietly means more to you.
Yeah.
I think that's applicable in, many situations, not just like health situations.
That's everything.
I think just knowing that there's a presence next to you is just so nice. And I think so many people feel the need to speak and fix. And I think the biggest thing, we talked about this in mental health actually, is it's okay to just quietly listen and be there.
Right.
So if there was one thing that anybody with POTS or anybody who's navigating life with a person in their close proximity that now has POTS, what is something that you could leave with them from your heart going through this for 7 years?
Yeah.
Because like we've said many times throughout this episode, it is it's coming more common because of COVID.
Right.
So what can you, just a little educated piece, a little from your heart piece to help people as they start navigating this?
I think you have to be okay with starting over. And I'm the type of person that doesn't like to start over. So I had to learn to become patient with my own body. I'm an extrovert by nature, but my body has become introverted. So I've had to learn to be okay with that and not fight it. And I fought it for a long time, and I just kept on the cycle of being sick. I would say be okay with starting over. Know that you're not alone, that there are thousands of people that have this, and that there are support groups out there. There are clinics that help with the depression part of it, that help with mental aspect of it, and just wrapping your head around the fact that you're no longer ever going to be what you were. And be okay with that. And it's really easier said than done. But if I could go back and tell my old self from 7 years ago, okay, Samantha, like this is where you're going to be in 7 years. You're going to be okay. Like you're not going to die. Whether or not you're going to be healed here, you can be healed in heaven, on the other side. And so I would say that too, that I prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed for so long to be healed completely. But I really feel like God has healed me, because what I went through in the last 7 years, I'm further along in my walk with the Lord than I would have been if I hadn't had POTS.
I love that.
And so I am thankful for it.
What an amazing perspective.
Yeah. But yeah, because I was so angry at God for so long for having POTS and like, Lord, why would you do this to me? And now I'm thankful for it because it has allowed me to grow. But being okay with starting over, and it's okay to start over, I would definitely say that that's my main thing. And knowing that you can still live a very full life with POTS.
You can go parasailing and jump off a cliff.
You can go parasailing and jump off a cliff.
As per Sam.
Yes, as per me. And so it's okay. Yeah.
And I just, we have just a couple minutes left, and I want to take that time to just really honor you. You have gone through so much, and I've watched it because I've in that part of the family. And so I just want to honor you, because even in the last year, you are such a light to people.
Oh, thank you.
And there was so many times where I thought, when my health was plummeting, when I was using the walker, I thought, if Sam can do this, so can I.
Right.
And I really want to honor you. I am.
Yeah.
I'm doing my life again.
Right.
If you're watching this, I want you to look at Sam and know, if she can do it, so can you. And if she can be sitting here today, jumping off cliffs and parasailing, you can still live your life. And not only do that, but you can be like her. You can be a light to other people. I cannot tell you how much I've either called her in the last year, or just looked back on her. And I just want to honor you.
And the same with you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. I just really want to honor you.
It's all part of sharing your testimony.
It is.
Ben talks about that. The greatest sermon you'll ever preach is your testimony.
Yeah. So. I love it. So anyway, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.